The great hall buzzed with the chaotic symphony of 1,000 first-year aspirations, clinking silverware, and the booming laughter of older students. Yet, to Leo Thorne, it often felt like a carefully constructed wall, shutting him out. He sat at the Gryffindor table, a quiet island in a sea of boisterous energy, picking at his treacle tart. His gaze, usually downcast, drifted across the familiar faces, searching, not for connection, but for patterns, for the unsaid things. Being orphaned young had taught him to observe, to read the subtle shifts in expressions, the telltale fidgets, the tiny discrepancies that others glossed over. It was a skill honed in silence, a shield against the unpredictable world. Hogwarts, with its ancient stone and whispering secrets, was supposed to be a place of belonging, a home. But it often felt like just another grand, imposing institution where he was, once again, the outsider. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, sat a few seats down, his Scara beacon, his two loyal companions, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, flanking him like an impenetrable force field. Their laughter was easy, their conversations fluid, their camaraderie almost offensively natural. Leo watched them, not with envy, but with a detached fascination, like observing a rare, vibrant species through a pane of enchanted glass. He understood why Harry and Ron were inseparable, their personalities clashing and complementing in equal measure. But Hermione was different. From the first moment on the Hogwarts Express, she had been a whirlwind of frantic intelligence, a walking encyclopedia of magical theory. Her hand had shot up in every class, her answers precise, her focus unwavering. Most wrote it off as pure academic brilliance, a slightly annoying perfectionism that would mellow with age. Leo, however, saw something more. He noticed, for instance, how her eyes, even when fixed on Professor Flitwick's demonstration of a simple Wingardium Leviosa, still darted, almost imperceptibly, to the windows, to the large grandfather clock by the entrance, to the movements of the house elves replenishing platters. It was a practice sweep, a systematic assessment of her surroundings that went beyond mere curiosity. Today, during breakfast, she was unusually quiet, her fork making neat, almost surgical movements as she sectioned her scrambled eggs. Her book, Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, lay open beside her plate, but Leo saw her glance at it only intermittently. Instead, her attention seemed divided between a rapid mental calculation and the small, silver object clutched in her left hand, partially hidden beneath the table. He caught only a flicker, a glint of polished metal, an intricate button, then it was gone, vanished back into the pocket of her robes. It wasn't a wand. It wasn't a quill. It certainly wasn't a wizarding device he recognized from any of his introductory texts. His brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. It was the kind of detail most would dismiss as a trick of the light, a stray reflection. But Leo knew better. His mind, accustomed to cataloging the world in minutiae, flagged it as an anomaly. Leo, you going to eat that sausage or just stare it into submission? Neville Longbottom, slumped beside him, looked up with a shy smile, his face framed by perpetually worried eyes. Neville, bless his nervous heart, was the closest thing Leo had to a friend. They were fellow Gryffindors, both awkwardly quiet, both feeling the pressure of being in the same house as Harry Potter. Neville's presence was a comforting reminder that he wasn't entirely alone in his social struggles. Sorry, Neville, Leo mumbled, pushing the plate towards him. Distracted. Neville gratefully speared the sausage. Yeah, I get that. Professor Snape's stare does that to me. Feels like he's trying to melt my brain. He shuddered. Leo managed a small smile. No, not Snape. Just thinking. He didn't elaborate, knowing Neville probably wouldn't understand his particular brand of thinking. Neville was good at seeing what was right in front of him. Leo often found himself looking for what was behind it. The morning brought charms class, always a welcome respite from the gloom of potions or the intimidating complexity of transfiguration. Professor Flitwick, a diminutive but vibrant wizard, had a knack for making magic feel accessible, even joyful. He bounded onto a stack of books to address the class, his squeaky voice radiating enthusiasm. Now, today, we're going to refine our Lumos charm. A simple spell, yes, but crucial for focus, for intent. Remember, the wand is merely a channel for your magical energy, but the mind is the true crucible. Leo found himself enjoying the rhythm of the class. He liked charms. The spells were straightforward, the movements precise. He wasn't flashy, but he was careful, meticulous. When Flitwick went around, offering gentle corrections, he paused by Leo's desk. "Excellent, Mr. Thorne. See that flicker? A commendable effort. Many struggle with the clarity of light in their first attempt. You have a quiet precision, a delicate touch. Don't underestimate it." Flitwick's genuine praise warmed a small corner of Leo's insecure heart. It was a rare affirmation in a world where he often felt overlooked. He glanced up, and across the room, he saw Hermione Granger, her wand tip glowing with a beam of light so steady and bright it looked like a miniature sun. Her movements were economical, almost robotic in their efficiency. She wasn't just casting a spell, she was executing a programmed command. And as Flitwick moved away, praising another student, Leo saw her swiftly, almost subconsciously, rub the pad of her thumb against her index finger, a gesture he'd seen before. It was as if she were checking for a texture, a seam, a tiny switch on some invisible device. That evening, tucked away in a quiet corner of the Gryffindor common room, Leo pretended to read A History of Magic, but his mind kept replaying the day's observations. Hermione's furtive glance at the silver object, her systematic sweeps of the Great Hall, the almost mechanical precision of her spells, and that odd, tactile habit. It wasn't just that she was smart, it was how she was smart. It was almost engineered. He remembered a fleeting moment from a week ago, in the bustling corridor before Transfiguration. A clumsy second year had bumped into Hermione, sending her books scattering. As Leo helped her retrieve them, he'd noticed something odd peeking from her open satchel. It was a thin, sleek rectangle of dark metal, no bigger than his palm, with a small, circular lens on one side. It had looked distinctly Muggle. Like a miniature camera, but far too advanced for anything his aunt and uncle, his Muggle guardians, would have owned. He dismissed it then, blaming his lack of magical knowledge, assuming it was some obscure wizarding artifact. But now, coupled with today's observations, it resurfaced, gleaming with new significance. He watched her now, sitting at a table with Harry and Ron. Harry was laughing, Ron was gesturing wildly, but Hermione was holding a small, leather-bound notebook, scribbling furiously. Every few seconds, she would pause, her eyes unfocusing for a moment, as if listening to something only she could hear, or processing data invisible to everyone else. Then her quill would resume its frantic dance across the page. It wasn't the focused concentration of a student taking notes, it was the intense, almost obsessive diligence of someone compiling a report. His gaze lingered on her, trying to decipher the subtle nuances. What was she writing? Was it a study guide? Or something more? He knew she was Muggle-born, so perhaps she had Muggle items, but the way she hid them, the way she used them with such stealth, it was out of place at Hogwarts. It was out of place for a brilliant, if slightly overzealous, first-year witch. A chill, not from the drafty stone walls, but from a burgeoning suspicion, settled in Leo's gut. He remembered the hushed whispers he'd sometimes overheard among older students, fragments about dark forces, unsettling currents, and things Dumbledore doesn't tell us. He dismissed them as sensationalism, part of the background noise of a world still reeling from Voldemort's brief return. But what if those whispers weren't just background noise? What if there was something more sinister at play, something subtle enough to escape the notice of even the most powerful wizards? And what if Hermione Granger, the brilliant, bookish, seemingly ordinary Muggle-born, was somehow connected to it? He found himself sitting up straighter, his own insecurity momentarily forgotten, replaced by a prickle of genuine intrigue. He had always been good at noticing things, at piecing together disconnected facts. It was a quiet strength he rarely acknowledged. But this felt different. It felt important. His eyes narrowed slightly as Hermione, with a final, decisive flourish, snapped her notebook shut. She tucked it carefully into her satchel, then stood up, giving Harry and Ron a quick, almost rehearsed smile before heading towards the girls' dormitory. As she passed Leo's table, her gaze, sharp and analytical, flickered towards him for a mere fraction of a second. It was too quick for her to have truly seen him, too fleeting for him to have registered in her periphery. Yet, Leo felt it. A cold, assessing glance, devoid of warmth or curiosity. It was the look of someone evaluating a potential threat, or perhaps a potential asset. And for the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, Leo Thorne didn't feel like an overlooked outsider. He felt like he had seen something he shouldn't have. And he knew, with a certainty that thrummed through his veins, that he couldn't simply ignore it. He had to understand. He had to know what Hermione Granger was truly doing at Hogwarts. The heavy scent of aged parchment and old leather was a constant companion in the Hogwarts library, a familiar comfort for Leo Thorne. He often sought refuge here, amidst the towering shelves and hushed whispers, finding a strange peace that eluded him in the boisterous common room or the chaotic Great Hall. Yet, even in this sanctuary, the quiet thrum of his own unease persisted. He was ostensibly researching an essay for Professor Binns's History of Magic, a task that usually involved a futile search for anything remotely engaging. But his gaze, as it so often did, drifted. Across a polished oak table, tucked away in a shadowed corner, sat Hermione Granger. She was an anomaly, even among the eccentricities of Hogwarts. Her focus was a tangible thing, a force field around her that seemed to deflect all distractions. Today, however, Leo noticed something new. She wasn't merely studying, she was dissecting. Her head was bowed over a particularly thick tome on ancient runes, her bushy hair obscuring her face, but her fingers moved with a peculiar dexterity. He watched as she slid a slender, almost imperceptible, metallic stylus from her sleeve. It wasn't a standard quill, nor did it appear to be a simple pen. As she touched its tip to a diagram in the rune book, a faint, almost microscopic shimmer of light pulsed at its end, too quick for anyone but a dedicated observer to catch. There was no ink, no parchment being marked, yet Hermione's brow furrowed in concentration, as if she were absorbing information directly from the diagram. She did this several times, tracing the complex patterns, before the stylus vanished back up her sleeve with a practiced, fluid motion. Leo blinked. He rubbed his eyes, convinced he must have imagined it. He'd seen flickering candlelight, shadows playing tricks. Yet, the image persisted in his mind, the glint of metal, the tiny, precise light, Hermione's unnaturally intense focus. It wasn't magic, not as he understood it. It was too mechanical, too precise. A knot tightened in his stomach. He tried to dismiss it, to tell himself that Hermione was simply brilliant, perhaps had some unique muggle-born way of taking notes. But his gut instinct, that quiet, insistent voice he'd learned to trust, told him otherwise. This was different. This was peculiar. Over the next few days, Leo found himself subtly tracking Hermione. It wasn't deliberate stalking, more like an accidental gravitational pull. He'd notice her in the periphery of his vision in the Great Hall, her meals consumed with efficient haste before she vanished. He'd hear her hurried footsteps in the corridors, always seemingly en route to somewhere important. He started paying closer attention during classes, too. While most students were grappling with the complexities of spellcasting or potion-making, Hermione was often ahead, her mind racing, but her movements were also guarded. One afternoon, Leo was late for charms. He'd been stuck trying to coax a particularly stubborn feather to levitate in a practice session with Neville, who was having even less luck than him. Hustling through a deserted stretch of corridor on the 3rd floor, a shortcut he discovered that wound past a series of rarely used classrooms, he heard a low murmur coming from one of the darkened doorways. Curiosity, a potent force for Leo, tugged at him. He slowed, pressing himself against the cold stone wall, inching closer. The door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping from within. He peered through the crack. Hermione Granger stood in the center of the dusty, abandoned classroom. She wasn't practicing spells. She was holding a small, flat device, not a wand, that glowed with a faint blue light. Her free hand moved over a section of the wall, sweeping back and forth as if cleaning it. But the blue light on the device pulsed, revealing intricate, almost invisible patterns etched into the stone beneath the layers of grime and neglect. It looked like some kind of scanner. As she worked, a tiny earpiece, no larger than a dewdrop, nestled in her ear. She was speaking in hushed tones, almost a whisper, but Leo's enhanced hearing, a result of years of quiet observation, caught fragments. Confirmed. Residual energy signature matches previous scans. The wording is archaic, but layered. Yes, a localized bypass might be possible from quadrant beta 7 if the pressure points are precise. No, not yet. I need more data on the resonant frequencies. Leo's breath hitched. He knew enough about Hogwarts' history to know that the castle was practically stitched together with ancient wards, powerful protections that dated back centuries. What was Hermione doing scanning them? And quadrant beta 7? Localized bypass? This wasn't magic homework. This was something else entirely. Something serious. His heart hammered against his ribs. He felt a sudden, profound chill, far colder than the stone against his back. He needed to get out of there. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to back away, his footsteps feather-light. A floorboard creaked. It was barely audible, a whisper of sound in the still corridor. But Hermione froze. Her head snapped up, her eyes, sharp and intelligent, darting to the door. Leo, caught like a deer in headlights, found himself staring directly into them. For a split second, an eternity, they held each other's gaze. There was no panic in Hermione's eyes, no surprise. Only a swift, almost imperceptible flicker of assessment, a cold calculation. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished, replaced by an expression of mild curiosity, as if he were merely another student who had stumbled upon her in a moment of solitary study. "Oh, hello, Leo," she said, her voice perfectly calm, a little breathless, as if she'd just been deeply engrossed. The blue device was already gone, tucked away with impossible speed. Her hands were now resting innocently on a stack of dusty textbooks on a nearby desk. Just doing some extra research on ancient architectural enchantments. Fascinating stuff, really. Leo swallowed, his throat dry. Right, he managed, his voice a little hoarse. Running late for charms. Professor Flitwick. He gestured vaguely down the corridor. Hermione offered a small, polite smile. "You'd better hurry then. Don't want to miss the featherlight charm lesson, do you?" Her eyes lingered on him for just a beat too long before she turned back to her research. Leo practically fled. He didn't slow until he burst into the charms classroom, breathless and disheveled, earning a concerned glance from Professor Flitwick and a bewildered one from Neville. He spent the rest of the day in a fog, the image of Hermione and her strange device replaying in his mind. Ancient wards. Quadrant beta 7. Localized bypass. It sounded like something out of a Muggle spy film, not Hogwarts. What could she possibly be doing? His disquiet followed him to dinner. He picked at his roast chicken, barely tasting it. Across the Great Hall, he saw Hermione chatting animatedly with Harry and Ron, looking perfectly normal, perfectly innocent. A first-year witch, dedicated to her studies. But Leo knew better. Later that evening, back in the relatively safe confines of the Gryffindor common room, Leo was trying to focus on a particularly tricky transfiguration essay. Neville, sprawled on a squashy armchair nearby, was muttering to himself as he struggled with his own homework. "Honestly, how am I supposed to turn a matchstick into a needle? Mine just keeps getting longer and splinters," Neville sighed, gesturing at a singed matchstick that had indeed sprouted a few extra woody tendrils. Leo managed a weak smile. "Just focus on the transformation, Neville. Imagine the needle, really picture it." He was trying to sound helpful, but his mind kept drifting back to Hermione. "Easy for you to say, Leo," Neville grumbled. "You always seem to understand things without even trying. You notice the tiny details that make the spells work." Neville's words resonated with an uncomfortable accuracy. His ability to notice the tiny details was exactly what had landed him in this unsettling predicament. He glanced around the common room. It was bustling. Students were chatting, playing chess, practicing minor charms. Everything seemed normal. But as his gaze swept past the fireplace, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Perched on the mantelpiece, almost indistinguishable from the other ornate carvings, was a small, brass-colored beetle. It was motionless, almost certainly a decorative piece, but as Leo watched, one of its tiny antennae twitched, ever so slightly, in his direction. A jolt went through him. He'd never noticed that beetle before. It felt wrong. His skin prickled, the hairs on his arms rising. He had an overwhelming, chilling sensation that he was being watched. He turned his head slowly, his eyes sweeping the room, looking for anything out of place. His gaze landed, almost inevitably, on Hermione Granger, who was sitting several tables away, ostensibly engrossed in a potions textbook. Her head was slightly bowed, but Leo could have sworn her eyes flickered up, just for a split second, to meet his. Her expression was neutral, unreadable, yet there was a deep, knowing intelligence in them that sent a shiver down his spine. She wasn't just observing, she was monitoring. And he, Leo Thorne, the invisible first year, had become her latest subject. The quiet observer had just become the observed. The game, whatever it was, had just gotten very real. The chill of early November clung to the ancient stones of Hogwarts, seeping into the Great Hall even during mealtimes. Leo Thorne, huddled over a bowl of porridge that morning, felt it particularly keenly in his bones, a familiar ache of loneliness that no amount of magic seemed capable of dispelling. He watched the animated conversations of the older students, the laughter of the golden trio echoing a few tables down, and felt the familiar knot of inadequacy tighten in his stomach. Yet, amidst the bustling chaos, his gaze still gravitated towards Hermione Granger. She sat, as usual, a little apart from Harry and Ron, meticulously dissecting a piece of toast, her brow furrowed in thought. There was a peculiar grace in her movements, a silent efficiency that spoke less of a first-year student and more of someone with a lifetime of disciplined habits. Yesterday, he'd seen her during Charm's class, her wand movements precise, but her eyes, when she thought no one was looking, had darted around the room with an almost preternatural awareness, scanning, assessing. He'd also caught a fleeting glimpse of her slipping something small and metallic back into her pocket during a transfiguration lesson, certainly not a magical item. It was these tiny, dissonant details that snagged on Leo's mind, creating a mosaic that didn't quite fit the picture everyone else saw. Hermione, meanwhile, was acutely aware of Leo's gaze. From the moment she'd noticed his unusual retention of detail, the way he'd seen her adjust the miniature earpiece, the subtle shift in her posture when receiving an instruction, she'd marked him. His observations weren't malicious, merely perceptive. Most first years were too engrossed in the novelty of magic to truly see. Leo saw the cracks in the veneer, the things that didn't belong. This made him a complication, but also, potentially, an asset. Her mother's words, "Exploit every resource, Natasha," echoed in her mind. A quiet boy easily dismissed with an uncanny knack for noticing anomalies. He could be a very useful, if unwitting, probe. She'd spent the last few days observing him, mapping his routines, his favorite quiet corners, his patterns of thought. He gravitated towards puzzles, towards things out of place. This gave her an idea. The network she was investigating within Hogwarts, the one Alastair Finch was so deeply embedded in, often used a rarely visited section of the library, the South Annex, tucked away behind dusty shelves of forgotten divination texts, as a temporary rendezvous point. It was a perfect blend of public access and private seclusion. Finch had been using it more frequently of late, a subtle shift Hermione had flagged. Later that afternoon, during a particularly grueling potions class, Hermione implemented her plan. Professor Snape was droning on about the delicate balance of powdered bicorn horn, and Leo, despite his efforts, found his mind wandering, his gaze drifting towards Hermione. She was focused, of course, her cauldron bubbling perfectly, but as she reached for a flask of murtlap essence, her hand slipped. The flask clattered, not shattering, but rolling harmlessly under the table towards Leo's feet. "Oh dear," Hermione murmured, feigning embarrassment. "Terribly clumsy of me." As Leo bent to retrieve it, his fingers brushed against a tiny, almost invisible sliver of parchment stuck to the bottom of the flask. It was no bigger than his fingernail, intricately folded and subtly marked with a minuscule, almost imperceptible symbol he'd never seen before, a stylized serpent entwined around a skeletal hand. He'd barely registered it before he handed the flask back, his brow furrowed in confusion. Hermione offered a quick, "Thank you, Leo," her eyes briefly meeting his, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths before she turned back to her potion. The symbol nagged at him throughout the rest of the day. It wasn't a standard Hogwarts emblem, nor was it in any of the obscure magical creature texts he'd pored over. It felt ancient and familiar somehow. He passed the next period in the library, trying to shake the feeling, when Hermione happened to walk past, heading towards the restricted section. "Lost, Leo?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "If you're looking for reference on the potion of living death, I'd suggest something less clandestine." She gestured vaguely towards the general studies section. Then, as if an afterthought, she added, "Speaking of clandestine, I've noticed Alastair Finch has been spending an awful lot of time in the South Annex lately. He's usually so fastidious about using the main study areas. I wonder what could be so important there, beyond those old star charts." She wrinkled her nose slightly, a gesture of intellectual disdain for useless knowledge. Then, with a curt nod, she disappeared into the maze of shelves. Leo stared after her. Finch, the senior Ravenclaw prefect, a charming, universally liked figure who always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. He was usually in the more prominent study zones, offering help, organizing events. The South Annex was a forgotten, dusty part of the library, primarily filled with archaic astrological maps and failed divination theories. Why would Finch be there, and so frequently, according to Hermione? And why had Hermione mentioned it, seemingly so offhandedly? His mind, ever drawn to anomalies, began to connect the dots. The strange symbol, Hermione's pointed question about Finch and the South Annex. It felt like a riddle he was compelled to solve. That evening, Leo found himself drawn to the library like a moth to a flickering flame. Neville Longbottom, ever his shadow and reluctant companion, trotted beside him. "Still trying to figure out that symbol, Leo?" Neville mumbled, still a bit dazed from a particularly vigorous transfiguration lesson where his teacup had stubbornly remained half-frog. "Something like that," Leo replied evasively. He didn't want to drag Neville into what felt increasingly like a personal investigation. They found a quiet corner near the entrance of the South Annex, ostensibly to work on a charms essay, but Leo's eyes kept darting towards the dusty archway. It wasn't long before Alastair Finch appeared. He moved with a confident stride, a stack of scrolls tucked under one arm, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He exchanged pleasantries with a few passing students, his charisma effortless. Then, to Leo's surprise, he turned and, with an almost imperceptible flick of his wrist, whispered a spell. The air shimmered faintly around the archway to the South Annex, and Finch slipped through. "Did you see that?" Leo whispered, tugging Neville's sleeve. "He just cast something." Neville blinked. "Cast what?" "He just went into the library, didn't he? Probably enchanting his scrolls to float or something." He looked at Leo, then at the empty archway. "Are you all right, Leo? You've been a bit jumpy today." Leo ignored him. Neville hadn't seen the shimmer, hadn't noticed the subtle shift in the air. Only he had. It confirmed Hermione's seemingly innocent comment. Finch was indeed acting strangely. And that symbol. He waited. An hour passed, then two. The library slowly emptied as curfew approached. Neville, thoroughly bored, had finally succumbed to sleep, head lolling on a tome about ancient rune lore. Finch hadn't emerged. This wasn't just Finch studying. This was something else. A knot of apprehension tightened in Leo's gut. He knew, instinctively, that whatever Finch was doing, it wasn't meant for public consumption. Gathering his courage, Leo nudged Neville awake. "I'll be right back. Just need to grab a book from the back." Neville groaned, pushing himself up. "Don't be long, Leo. I don't want to get caught after curfew." Slipping silently under the archway, Leo found the South Annex eerily quiet. Rows of forgotten books stood like silent sentinels, bathed in the dim glow filtering in from the main library. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, like ozone and dried flowers. He moved slowly, cautiously, his wand clutched tightly in his hand, though he wasn't sure what spell he'd even cast. He was a first year. What could he do against a senior prefect, potentially doing something illicit? He turned a corner, past shelves of obsolete astronomical charts, and saw it. At the very end of the annex, where the outer wall met the library's foundation, was a tall, ornate wooden cabinet, one he'd never noticed before. It stood slightly ajar. A faint, pulsing light emanated from within, casting flickering shadows across the floor. He edged closer, his heart thumping like a drum against his ribs. Through the crack in the cabinet doors, Leo saw a sight that made his blood run cold. It wasn't just a cabinet, it was a concealed entrance. Beyond it, a narrow, unlit passage descended into darkness. And before the entrance, faintly glowing with an unnatural light, was a large, crudely drawn version of the very symbol he'd seen on Hermione's flask, the serpent entwined around the skeletal hand. He wasn't meant to see this. He knew that with chilling certainty. He pressed himself against a dusty shelf, peering into the crack. A low murmur of voices drifted up from the passage, too muffled to discern words, but undeniably human. This wasn't a study group. This was a secret, and it was alive. Just as he was about to retreat, a new sound reached him, lighter, quicker footsteps approaching from the main library. Someone else was coming. He scrambled for cover, diving behind a tall stack of discarded scrolls, his breath catching in his throat. The footsteps stopped right beside the cabinet. A soft gasp, then a whisper, clear and sharp in the silence. "Finch, you fool. You left it open." It was Hermione. The cold breath of the night seeped through the ancient stones of Hogwarts, biting at Leo Thorne's exposed skin as he crept down a rarely used spiral staircase. Moonlight, filtered through a grimy, arched window, cast long, distorted shadows that danced like specters ahead of him. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a drumbeat of fear and stubborn determination. Hermione's subtle cues had been enough. A dropped note about unusual energy spikes in the lower dungeons, a whispered observation about Finch's late-night forays towards the castle's forgotten corners. Leo, no longer content to merely observe, felt a pull towards understanding, a need to see for himself. He clutched his wand, a slender piece of cedar, feeling its familiar warmth against his palm. His Gryffindor common room was a distant memory of warmth and safety, now replaced by the creeping dread of the unknown. He passed tapestries depicting forgotten battles, their threads frayed and dusty, their heroic figures staring blankly into the gloom. He was searching for a specific corridor Hermione had vaguely referenced, where the stone gargoyle's eyes chipped, she'd mumbled, as if to herself, while passing him in the library. Sure enough, a few minutes later, down a dark, narrow passage that even Peeves seemed to avoid, he found it. A gargoyle, perched atop an archway, one of its stone eyes indeed chipped, seemed to watch him with silent judgment. Beneath it, the air felt strangely heavy, thrumming with an almost imperceptible vibration. Leo drew a deep, shaky breath, peering into the inky blackness beyond. He remembered Finch's peculiar habit of tracing symbols on dusty surfaces, almost subconsciously, symbols that didn't look like any magical script Leo had ever seen. He had a hunch. Drawing his wand, he murmured, "Lumos," and a weak light bloomed from its tip, chasing away some of the shadows. He looked for any sign of disturbance, anything out of place. His gaze fell upon a section of wall beneath the gargoyle, a seam he hadn't noticed before, subtly misaligned. He reached out, his fingers brushing against cold stone, then a small, almost invisible indentation. It felt like a button. Hesitantly, he pressed it. With a low, grinding groan that echoed through the deserted corridor, a section of the wall slid inward, revealing a narrow, descending passage. A gust of stale, earthy air, thick with the scent of damp stone and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, like spilled blood, wafted out. Leo swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. This was it. This was what Hermione had been hinting at. This was where Finch went. He hesitated for only a second, the image of his quiet, unassuming self, always on the sidelines, flashing through his mind. Not anymore. Not tonight. He stepped into the darkness, the hidden passage closing silently behind him, leaving him in a world of oppressive quiet. The passage spiraled downwards, narrower and steeper than he expected. The air grew colder, and the faint thrumming sensation intensified, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. His wand light barely pushed back the encroaching gloom. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a few minutes, the tunnel widened into a large, cavernous chamber. It was unlike anything Leo had ever seen. The natural rock walls were carved with intricate, ancient-looking symbols, glowing with a faint, intermittent crimson light. In the center, a large stone slab, stained dark, served as an altar. Around it, several figures stood cloaked and hooded, their faces obscured. And in front of them, overseeing the ritual, was Alistair Finch. Finch was no longer the charming, confident prefect. His face, illuminated by the crimson light, was taut with a fervent intensity, his eyes glinting with a fanatic zeal that sent a shiver down Leo's spine. He held aloft a wicked-looking obsidian dagger, its tip catching the crimson glow. He was chanting in a low, guttural language Leo didn't recognize, a language that vibrated in his very bones, stirring a primal fear. Leo flattened himself against a rough section of wall, partially hidden by a jutting rock formation. His heart pounded so loudly, he was sure they could hear it. He watched, horrified, as Finch began to make arcane gestures over the altar, the air crackling with dark energy. The crimson carvings on the walls pulsed brighter, the thrumming growing into a deep, resonant hum that seemed to shake the very foundations of the castle. One of the cloaked figures, seemingly younger and smaller than the others, moved nervously, casting a furtive glance towards Leo's hiding spot. Panic seized Leo. Had he been seen? Was his breathing too loud? He tried to shrink further into the shadows, but it was too late. Finch, seemingly sensing the shift in attention, paused his chant. His head snapped up, his eyes, burning with that unnatural zeal, fixing directly on Leo's hiding place. A slow, chilling smile spread across his face, not charming, but utterly predatory. Well, Finch purred, his voice amplified, echoing unnervingly through the chamber. It seems we have a guest. Little Thorne, isn't it? Always poking where you don't belong. Leo froze, terror seizing him. His wand felt heavy, useless. He was exposed, alone, facing a powerful, deranged senior student and his shadowy cult. Come out, little Gryffindor, Finch commanded, his voice hardening, losing all traces of his former charisma. Don't be shy. You've seen too much to simply scurry back to your common room. Leo felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate, illogical instinct to run. He pushed off the wall, stumbled, and started to back away, his eyes darting frantically for an escape. The cloaked figures began to stir, slowly turning towards him. Now, Finch said, a cruel amusement in his tone. No need for theatrics. This won't hurt much. He raised the obsidian dagger, not towards the altar, but towards Leo. The crimson light flared, reflecting menacingly off its sharpened edge. A ripple of dark magic emanated from him, a tangible pressure that pushed down on Leo, forcing him to his knees. Just as Finch began to incant a new, menacing spell, a blur of movement erupted from the shadows above. A figure dropped silently from a high ledge, landing with astonishing grace between Leo and Finch. It was Hermione. She moved with an efficiency that was terrifyingly un-Hermione-like. Before Finch could even react, she sent a blinding flash of light from her wand directly into his face, startling him and causing him to stagger back. Simultaneously, with a flick of her other hand, the one that usually held a textbook, she hurled a small, spherical object that burst into a cloud of thick, acrid smoke, engulfing Finch and his followers. Leo. Run, she hissed, her voice sharp with urgency, completely unlike her usual composed self. She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulled him towards a narrow crack in the wall, previously unnoticed in the chaos. Stunned but propelled by pure instinct, Leo scrambled after her. He heard Finch's enraged roar, followed by the muffled curses of his followers as they stumbled through the smoke. Hermione, still dragging him, twisted her wand, and a shower of sparks erupted behind them, momentarily sealing the crack with illusory rock. They burst into a cramped, dusty tunnel, Hermione never faltering, pulling Leo along at a breakneck pace. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but the fear of Finch's dagger propelled him forward. They ran for what felt like an eternity, the muffled shouts and rising magical energies from the chamber slowly fading behind them. Finally, they emerged into a deserted, unremarkable corridor in the castle's upper levels. Hermione released his arm, leaning against the cold stone wall, her chest heaving. Her face, usually pale, was flushed, and a sheen of sweat glistened on her forehead, but her eyes were alert, scanning their surroundings. Leo, bent double, gasped for air, trying to process the night's events. The glowing symbols, the obsidian dagger, Finch's terrifying transformation, Hermione's impossible agility. What was that? Leo finally managed, straightening up, his voice hoarse. Finch, he's insane. And you, how did you? Hermione pushed away from the wall, her expression grim. He's not just insane, Leo. He's dangerous. And you, frankly, were incredibly reckless. Her tone was harsh, but Leo detected a flicker of something else beneath it. Concern? Reckless. Leo retorted, indignation momentarily overriding his terror. You're the one who kept dropping hints. I followed your breadcrumbs. Hermione sighed, running a hand through her already disheveled hair. Yes, I did. I needed someone to confirm my suspicions, someone observant enough to notice what others miss. I just didn't expect you to walk straight into the lion's den. She paused, her gaze intense. Look, Leo, there isn't time for a full explanation. What you saw tonight, it's real. Finch is part of a clandestine magical society operating within Hogwarts, trying to unlock an ancient, forbidden power. If they succeed, it could destabilize both our world and the Muggle one. Leo stared at her, utterly bewildered. A society? Forbidden power? What are you talking about? Hermione hesitated, weighing her words. I'm here to stop them. My family has been tracking this group for a while. They call themselves the Crimson Hand. She carefully omitted any mention of Natasha or her true mission. I can't do it alone, not without revealing myself completely, and that would compromise everything. You saw too much. Finch knows you saw him. He won't let you just walk away. Leo felt a fresh wave of terror. He was implicated, a target. But then, a strange sense of purpose, of being seen and needed, pushed through the fear. So, what do we do? He asked, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. Hermione looked at him, her eyes searching his, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. We stop them. Together. You have a knack for observation, for noticing the small things. I have other skills. But we have to work fast. What you witnessed tonight, it was a preliminary ritual. Finch is preparing for something bigger, something that will happen very soon. And I think, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, he plans to use the upcoming Quidditch match as a cover. The thought of an ancient, terrifying power being unleashed during a crowded Quidditch match, with hundreds of unsuspecting students and faculty present, sent a fresh wave of icy dread through Leo. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything he could have imagined. The cold, damp air of the hidden passage clung to Leo like a shroud, a stark contrast to the burning intensity in Hermione's eyes. Their shared secret, the discovery of Finch's chilling ritual site beneath the boathouse, had forged a fragile bridge between them. The uneasy alliance, born of necessity and mutual suspicion, now felt like their only hope. We have to tell someone, Leo whispered, his voice hoarse, the adrenaline from their narrow escape still thrumming in his veins. He clutched his wand, the simple Hollywood feeling suddenly heavier, more significant. Hermione nodded, her brow furrowed in deep thought. But who? Dumbledore is too obvious. Finch is a prefect, he has connections. We need someone who will believe us and act quickly, without raising the alarm prematurely. Leo thought of Professor Flitwick, the charms master whose encouraging words had always resonated with him. "Professor Flitwick," he suggested, surprising himself with the certainty in his tone. "He's sharp. He sees things. And he trusts me, I think." A flicker of something akin to admiration, or perhaps just pragmatism, crossed Hermione's face. "Flitwick, yes. He's meticulous, a master of detail. And he has a knack for cutting through bureaucracy." "Excellent choice, Thorne." The reluctant compliment sent a small warmth through Leo. He pushed aside the urge to smile. This was no time for ego. They waited until after curfew, using a carefully planned route through lesser-used corridors and the invisibility cloak Hermione borrowed from her ever-resourceful bag. The cloak, another non-magical marvel, shimmered with a subtle sheen that seemed to distort the air around them. It wasn't the famed Potter cloak, but a Muggle-made, advanced stealth garment, as Hermione had curtly explained. It worked. They found Professor Flitwick in his office, grading essays by the dim glow of a levitating orb. The room was a riot of books, delicate instruments, and diagrams of complex spell work. He looked up, his tiny frame perched on a stack of cushions, as they removed the cloak. His eyes, usually twinkling with amusement, narrowed. "Mr. Thorne? Miss Granger? To what do I owe this nocturnal visit?" He didn't sound angry, merely curious, his voice a soft, reedy whisper. "Professor," Hermione began, her voice tight with urgency, "we've uncovered something deeply disturbing. A hidden society within Hogwarts, led by Alastair Finch. They're planning a ritual tonight under the boathouse." Flitwick's face, usually animated, became still. The levitating orb flickered. "A ritual? Under the boathouse? This is a serious accusation, children." "We saw it, Professor," Leo interjected, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. He recounted the symbols, the strange chants he'd overheard, the oppressive aura of dark magic. He described Finch's unnerving calm, the way he seemed to command the other students, not with authority, but with a subtle, insidious influence. Hermione added details about the strange, pulsing energy readings she'd detected with her gadgets, corroborating Leo's observations with hard data. She even produced a miniaturized recording of Finch's voice discussing the awakening. Flitwick listened intently, his gaze moving between them, absorbing every word. He didn't interrupt, but Leo could see the wheels turning in his mind, connecting the dots. Finally, the charm's master stood, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a grave solemnity. "This is indeed grave. If true, it poses an existential threat to the school and perhaps beyond. We must act. Immediately." He strode to a hidden compartment in his desk, extracting a small, intricately carved wooden whistle. "I will alert the headmaster and the ministry aurors. You too. You have shown immense bravery and perceptiveness. But this is no longer a student matter. You are to remain here, safe." "No," Leo blurted out, surprising himself and Hermione. "Professor, we know the way. We saw their security, their routine. We can guide you." He met Flitwick's gaze, unwilling to back down. "Finch almost caught me. I need to see this through." Hermione, after a moment's hesitation, nodded. "Leo is right, Professor. Their wards are unusual. They respond to specific magical signatures. We understand them better than anyone else." Her eyes, usually so focused on logic, held a new glint of determined protectiveness for Leo. Flitwick looked at them, then at the whistle in his hand. He blew it once, a sound barely audible, yet rich with ancient magic. It would send a silent summons, but reinforcements would take time. He sighed, a tiny figure burdened by a monumental decision. "Very well. But you are to stay behind me always. Is that understood?" "Yes, Professor," they chorused. The passage to the ritual site was even more menacing now that they were returning with purpose. The air grew heavy, thick with an almost palpable darkness that made Leo's skin crawl. They moved with Flitwick leading, his wand tip glowing with a silent lumos. As they neared the cavern beneath the boathouse, they heard the low drone of chanting, growing louder, more rhythmic. "They've begun," Hermione whispered, her hand instinctively clutching Leo's arm. Her touch, usually so guarded, was a jolt of shared fear and resolve. They peered around the ancient stone archway. A dozen robed figures, mostly older students and a few masked adults Leo didn't recognize, stood in a circle around a pulsating obsidian altar. At its center, a swirling vortex of shadowy energy pulsed, threatening to tear the very fabric of the chamber apart. Alistair Finch stood before it, his face serene, his eyes gleaming with a manic devotion. He was speaking, his voice amplified by the ritual, weaving a spell of power and submission. And with this final incantation, the veil shall thin, the ancient power shall awaken, and the true heirs of magic shall reclaim their dominion. Finch's voice boomed, resonating with a terrifying authority. "He's trying to summon something," Flitwick muttered, his face grim. "A rift to another plane. This is darker than I imagined." Leo felt a surge of cold terror, but also a fierce protectiveness for his school, his friends, his fledgling sense of belonging. This was what he'd sensed, the unsettling undercurrents. This was the truth he had to confront. "No!" Flitwick bellowed, bursting through the archway, his wand a blur. "Stop this at once." The chanting broke. Finch spun around, his eyes blazing. "Flitwick, you meddling fool." He unleashed a dark, unidentifiable spell at the charm's master. But Flitwick, despite his size, was lightning fast. A shimmering Protego Maxima erupted, deflecting Finch's attack. "Students, cease this madness. You are being manipulated." Chaos erupted. The robed figures, disoriented, began to retaliate with spells, some weak, some shockingly potent. The vortex on the altar pulsed erratically, spitting sparks of dark energy. "Professor, the altar," Hermione shouted, pointing. "If that ritual completes, it could tear a hole in reality." Leo saw it. The swirling energy was growing, threatening to engulf the entire chamber. He remembered the diagram he'd seen, the intricate symbols Finch had drawn. He also remembered Professor Flitwick's lessons on counter-charms, the delicate balance of magic. Without thinking, Leo darted forward, his mind racing. He didn't have the power to stop the entire ritual, but he could disrupt its focus. He aimed for the outermost circle of symbols carved into the stone, where he remembered Finch emphasizing the binding wards. "Finite incantatem," Leo cried, a burst of raw instinct guiding his wand. He focused all his will, all his fear and determination, into the simple countercharm. A wave of silvery energy shot from his wand, striking the ancient symbols. They flickered, then shattered, like glass. The vortex shrieked, destabilizing wildly. Finch roared in fury, turning his wand on Leo. "You insolent brat!" But Hermione was faster. "Expelliarmus," she shouted, her spell perfectly aimed, striking Finch's wand hand. The prefect's wand flew across the chamber, clattering against the stone wall. Just then, a flash of brilliant white light erupted from the archway. Dumbledore, followed by a phalanx of Aurors, had arrived. The ancient whistle had worked. Alistair Finch, Dumbledore's voice resonated, calm but powerful, cutting through the chaos. "This ends now." The Aurors, moving with practiced efficiency, began to apprehend the robed figures. Finch, wandless, snarled at Dumbledore, then at Leo and Hermione, a look of pure hatred on his face. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Crimson Caster will rise." He was quickly subdued, powerful magical cuffs snapping around his wrists. As the chamber slowly returned to quiet, the vortex on the altar dwindled, shrinking into a harmless pool of obsidian. The air began to clear, the oppressive darkness receding. Leo, breathless, leaned against a cold stone pillar, his legs trembling. He had done it. He had faced the unknown, confronted the threat, and helped stop it. The feeling was exhilarating, terrifying, and profoundly grounding. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was a participant. He was a protector. Professor Flitwick rushed over, his small hand resting on Leo's shoulder. "Mr. Thorne, that was an extraordinarily brave and perceptive act. Disrupting the binding wards, a first year. You saved us from a grave danger." His eyes, now twinkling with genuine pride, met Leo's. "You have found your place, my boy. A very important one." Later, as the ministry officials catalogued evidence and Dumbledore spoke in hushed tones with the Auror head, Leo found himself standing beside Hermione. Neville Longbottom, who had somehow heard about the commotion and bravely made his way to the boathouse area, only to be shooed away by Aurors, finally found Leo and clapped him on the back, beaming. "Leo, you were brilliant. I heard you helped stop them." Leo managed a small, genuine smile. "We all did, Neville." He looked at Hermione. "We did." Hermione, however, looked less relieved. Her gaze was distant, troubled. She excused herself, muttering about needing to confirm her sensor readings. Leo watched her go, a sense of unease returning. He knew she was thinking about more than just data. Later that night, in a secluded corner of the library, Hermione activated a minute communication device disguised as a quill. The air shimmered, and Natasha Romanoff's face, sharp and intelligent, materialized in a ghostly projection. "Report, Hermione." Natasha's voice was low, devoid of emotion. "Mission accomplished, Mother. The Crimson Caster ritual was stopped. Alistair Finch and his faction are apprehended. All data points confirm their intent to breach interdimensional barriers for a power grab." Natasha nodded slowly. "Excellent work. You performed flawlessly. This is a significant victory for the Red Rune. We have intercepted their communication channels, exposed their network. The intel on this Crimson Caster is invaluable." Hermione's face was unreadable, but a faint tremor in her hand betrayed her. There was collateral. Innocent students were involved, manipulated. Natasha's expression remained impassive, unavoidable in operations of this scale. "You secured the primary objective. Casualties are always regrettable, but necessary for the greater good." "And Leo Thorne?" Natasha asked, a slight narrowing of her eyes. "Your reports indicate he became integral." Hermione hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He proved perceptive. Useful. He provided critical intelligence and demonstrated remarkable courage. He was an asset." The word felt like ash on her tongue. Natasha's lips twitched, a hint of a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "An asset. Good. Keep him close, Hermione. His unique abilities for observation and his nascent magical talent might be more valuable than we initially assessed. A powerful, untrained magical mind, combined with a discerning eye. He could be a potent tool." Hermione's heart clenched. "A tool. Is that all Leo was? Is that all she was?" The victory felt hollow, tainted. She had saved Hogwarts, but at what cost to her own soul? And what other, darker conspiracies lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting for her mother's organization to exploit? "Understood, Mother," Hermione said, her voice devoid of any warmth. But as the projection flickered and died, she looked at the silent, empty library, her gaze distant. The Crimson Caster might have been stopped, but the shadows Natasha operated in, and the ones she was now asking Hermione to embrace, were far more terrifying. And Leo, so brave, so trusting, he was now caught in them too. The fight for Hogwarts was over, but Hermione knew, with a chilling certainty, that her true mission had only just begun. And the next battle would be fought not just with magic, but with loyalty, morality, and the growing conflict within her own heart.